For these reasons, the Felts had thought it best to leave Grin behind in the capable hands of Cousin Ed. But things had not gone according to plan. First of all, Ed had arrived 24 hours early, and not on the Tuesday as agreed. Second of all, she had totally misunderstood that she was required to stay in the Felts' house with Grin. Instead, she had arrived on Monday in the dead of night, so as to avoid the sun, and had carried the sleeping Grin from her kennel and into the waiting taxi, and off they had driven back to Ed's house in Fog View. Unsurprisingly, this had caused great consternation. The Felts had woken up to find Grin gone, and had naturally assumed she'd been dog-napped, as anyone might. Phone calls had been made, the misunderstanding explained, and a new, unlikely-to-go-wrong plan was formed. Now Cousin Ed was on her way back to Square Plains with their dog, to dog-sit in situ, while the Felts holidayed for 10 days with the Bobton-Trents in glorious sunshine. It all seemed so simple. However, when it came to the Felts getting from A to B, nothing was simple. For a start, Cousin Ed had unwisely decided to drive herself. Cousin Ed did not arrive in time for the handover of the door key. The travellers delayed their journey by 14 hours and 3 minutes, but in the end had to make the decision to set off regardless. They hid the door key where Cousin Ed, and indeed anyone else, might be sure to find it. Under the mat. They also left a note taped to the front door indicating where it had been hidden, just to be sure. Unfortunately, they were unable to telephone the Bobton-Trents to warn of their late departure because Bill had mislaid his address book and could not recall the phone number for Sweeping Acres. The Bobton-Trent family had decided to pass the time usefully while they waited in for the Felts' knock. It is only good manners to wait in when one is expecting guests, however late they may be, and were practising for the National Tiddlywinks tournament that was scheduled for September. Second cousin Barbara Bobton-Trent had come to stay and was helping La and Franklin improve their game and giving them a few pointers, having once been the championship title holder. Mr. Collingsworth, a neighbour, had popped in because his stove was on the blink and he couldn't face eating another salad. The evening was going as well as could be expected, considering Mr. Collingsworth was a terrible tiddlywinks player and a poor sport. He was the sort of person who was delightful company until he took part in anything competitive. He was about to execute a far from perfect flip of his tiddlywink when he stopped quite suddenly and whispered, "What was that?" "What was what?" asked Mr. Bobton-Trent, suspecting it was just another Collingsworth ploy to distract his opponents. "That," replied Mr. Collingsworth. Mr. Bobton-Trent paused to listen, and then he heard it too. "Sounded like somebody howling," he said. "Yes," agreed second cousin Barbara. "It could be howling, or maybe muttering." They tried to continue with their game, but found it difficult to concentrate because the howling, or muttering sound, was getting stronger. "Let's call Hubert," said Mrs. Bobton-Trent, reaching for the telephone. "He'll know what it is." She dialed the southwest wing extension, but there was no reply. "He's not in his room," she announced. They called down to the kitchen and the billiard room, the greenhouse and the library, but no one picked up the phone. "Of course," said Mrs. Bobton-Trent. "He will be at chess club. Chess club is Wednesday night, and it is Wednesday night, don't you think?" "I thought it was Thursday," said Mr. Bobton-Trent. "Oh, well, if it's Thursday, then he will be at geometry club," said Mrs. Bobton-Trent, flipping her tiddlywink into the high score pot. "What if it's Tuesday?" asked Mr. Bobton-Trent. Mrs. Bobton-Trent was saved from answering this question by the arrival of Hubert himself.